one of the best ever compliment I ever had in my life. I went from a large, from one role to another role. And the role that I left, right, I left like over 4 months. 4 months later, he came to me and said, Pei Si, it actually feels that you've never left. When I measure my own success, I think I'm only successful when I leave a certain place. The impact that I've had and the change I've made continues without me and beyond me.
Welcome to a special edition of Banking After Hours, leadership conversations celebrating women in finance, brought to you by AWS. Now, in the middle of 2024, Malaysia has surpassed its 2030 target of having 30% women in leadership positions for its top 100 publicly listed companies, 6 years ahead of schedule. That's when Taruni, who heads FSI sales in Malaysia and Philippines, got chatting. We were like, there's a lot of amazing women in this space, and we should do a series highlighting their stories and their leadership journey. And here we are today. We are joined by the CEO of Malaysia's first digital bank, Pei Si. Thank you for joining us. Thinking back to when you first started, and I think you are quite rare in the sense that you've stuck to one bank almost your entire career. I think you've spent easily 20 years in Standard Chartered Bank.
Yeah, more than 23 in fact.
23, oh wow.
23 years in Standard Chartered.
That's a long time. And you started in 1999.
Oh dear, you can tell everybody how old I am. Yes, I started in 1999.
God, do investigative journalism.
It's the spirit that counts.
So, I think for most of us, especially if we spend a big part of our professional career doing one same thing, it's very scary to make that jump. Right? And if you spend 20 years in a traditional bank and the next day you're like, hey, I'm going to go out and set up a new bank, that's a big decision to make. How do you go about making a decision like that?
I think first off is that in my 20 over years at Standard Chartered, I didn't do one thing. I was extremely lucky. The bank actually put me through various jobs. I think over the 23 years, I've done like almost 13 roles.
Wow.
Different type of roles in different parts of the bank, right? And therefore, having the opportunity to always learn new things, then having to adapt to every single team, and then try to deliver the outcome that you need to deliver. So then being able to be almost trained actually in those multiple roles, right? When the opportunity came to then let's do something completely new, it didn't feel like it was completely new. But what is different is I had moved from an organization that is a global institution into a startup, right? Where things actually in global institution that's more than 100 years old, where governance is set up, where the structures are very clear. You're moving to somewhere that is a completely blank sheet, right? And that's where, I won't say it's scary, I like to think I thought was extremely exciting. So that the jump was, I think, easier than I thought.
Really?
Yeah. It took me probably 3 days to make the decision, no?
That's faster than I would have made that decision. Because it's like you've been there for 2 decades, right? You know the people, you know the system, you know how to get things moving, and then to make that leap, and I think that's really exciting, and that culminated into the launch of GXBank last November, and you guys have done pretty well. Last I checked, you have about 750,000 customers and counting. When you set up GXBank, when you launched the bank, what is the North Star over here for you guys?
When we set up GXBank, it was very clear that our mandates are two. The first is around how do we serve the underserved? How do we nation build actually through financial inclusion? So that's the first. The second is that we're a technology company. We call ourselves a technology company providing financial services. So what that means is that we need to then actually figure out how do we use technology of today, and if we are so lucky we're using technology of today, right? Partnering, great partners along the way, and find a way to scale innovatively, right? Because what technology brings, unlike the 20 years ago when I started as a banker, is that it brings ability to scale at a cost that can actually give a great economic unit cost, right? And that really truly actually changes how we think about our business. So maybe one proof point is that, I've never, actually in my 20 years, been able to get like 100,000 customers in a month.
Right.
And we did, actually through GXBank. We had 100,000 customers acquired on a monthly basis. So imagine, right, how long it would have taken a regular traditional bank that's been 30, 40 years ago to get 100,000 customers.
How much ad dollars?
How much ad dollars, how many feet on the ground just to get that, right? So technology does change how one bank and how one think about the opportunity that's actually out there, right, for all of us.
And I think like one very clear thing to me that's very different is the speed of things as well. The number of products you roll out, the speed in which you roll out new products, and even in the way you roll out new products. Because in a bank, you won't really roll out an MVP product, right? So when you guys first launched, I remember you just launched the app without the debit card. And I don't think that's something that you would have done with a more traditional kind of bank. How are you adjusting to like the very different ways and different styles and different pace of things?
It was frankly really, really hard actually at the beginning. Because like you say, as a banker who's very used to doing things in a very structured way, we get a bit trembly, right, when things are a little bit unusual, right? Because any wrong step that you take, you really actually get a slap on the hand.
Yeah. It's not like a startup where you can really break things. You know? There's only a certain amount of things you can break.
Precisely, and you got to. So I think having the right team to understand that where is that guardrail, where are the edges, right? And knowing you need to play not in the center, because most banks will play in the center. Where we want to play is play at the edges. Right? And that's where I think the innovation starts. That's where if you get the right set of people, and I think we do, we're extremely lucky, right? Right set of people, then we challenge ourselves to deeply around the edges and challenge not only what we bring to the market, but I think more importantly, the mindset. As we think about when are you going to brave enough to actually go out and try like an MVP. Right? Because you can and do expect.
It must have felt a little bit queasy.
It kind of felt queasy because our customers would, and they did, right? Some of our users went like, how could you set a deposit product? There's no other way to actually use the product. But really, actually, the back of mind for us is really this. Because we are building a product from scratch. We are experimenting actually the customer journey that we have with them. We want to make sure that the experience is something that most of our users actually want. And we want to ensure there is stability and resilience to what we bring to the table. And that's the most important objective. And as we roll new functionalities out, then we keep testing these 4 criteria over and over again. And I think our customers and our users now do understand, right? And of course, because we were first, we probably had to educate a lot more. But as more and more of my digital banking peers comes in, I think they get used to it because that's really actually the way that we should roll our products.
Setting new norms and whatnot.
Absolutely. I think it's really nice to be able to set new standards.
But I think even AWS, you guys have similar principles, right? And again, we go back to the leadership principles in AWS, and one of it is bias for action. Are you seeing similar kind of principles being applied in AWS? And are you seeing that entrance of people like Pei Si Bank, that the traditional banks are also starting to rethink how they approach these things?
So, bias for action, it ties back to the history of us as a company, especially on the .com side. And it really boils down to speed matters. And I think customers like GXBank are where we are challenged, inspired the most, because imagine if we're slow and she's got a pace at which she wants to do a rollout. So that speed matters also really helps us being in compatibility with what our customers are trying to do. I think a very special learning for me was something that I saw in COVID, where I saw the difference of speed matters and what it brought to society. So Thailand was really crushed when COVID happened because tourism came to a grinding halt. And Siam Commercial Bank, traditional bank, but really, who took up the charge of being transformative, said, we'll do something to help street food. Because street food, the mom and pop shops, the delivery, all of that was also struggling without the tourists there. So they opened up and launched Robinhood, which is a food delivery app. Now imagine if they had done the traditional, let's do 12 months and roll out a product. You've missed the purpose.
Is half over already.
So in 3 months, you set up a food delivery platform. You've got the mom and pop shops on it. You've got the tuk-tuk drivers who are also struggling to find jobs, being the folks who are doing the delivery of food. And all of that was a very, very quick deployment, get the product out there, help the bank finally, because they also got alternate credit scoring of street food shops that was successful, and that would tell them where they could go on and give loans. So yes, bias for action for us as somebody who's delivering services. We love customers who also take that in, because you really need the forces to come together for it to bring out a product that's successful.
And I think, the impact that we do through the companies we work for is important. And sometimes it's also about the impact that we do as an individual as well, right? And I remember attending one of your press conferences.
Right.
It was about the fraud launch.
Okay.
So you shared a very personal story about how your daughter also was a victim of a fraud as one. You strike me as someone who loves your children a lot.
Yes, I do. I do love my children. Yes, Vincent.
What kind of, I guess, legacy, or what kind of principles do you hope to pass on to your children, your daughter, when they themselves step up to become leaders in the corporate world or in whatever industries they are in one day?
I think a few. Okay. First is that you really need to love what you do. The passion. So you need to find the purpose in whether it's the career or the life that you actually decide to take. And that purpose and that passion, therefore, actually should drive and will drive, I think, the success of that task that you take. So that's one. So don't do things just because somebody else asks you to do. You should do stuff that you love. That's actually number one. Number two is that you got to know yourself, right? Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know that there will be times that you have to take sacrifices, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like in my case, I've got 4 children, and over those years that I worked every single year, right, of my life, right, and with the family and the career that I had, I often had to make trade-offs. And you got to make those decisions as it goes, and there's truly actually no regrets. So the second is know yourself, know your strengths, and then play to it. The third, I think, is just courage.
Like the courage to leave a bank that you've been working for 2 decades.
Yes, absolutely, right? The courage to actually want to actually try new things. I would like my children to have the confidence to say that, I can try new things. I may or may not make it. I may fail, but my family's got my back. My friends got my back, right? And my mentors and my bosses have my back. And I think that's an important, very rare state to be in. So in that way, same way, I've been thinking about the organization and how we want to provide to our own staff. I like to be able to say we provide a back actually to all our staff actually within the organization, for them to do what they need to do at the pace they need to do, at something that they love to do, right? And that's important actually to all of us.
I think you brought up an important point about drive, right? Because I think at the end of the day, if we just show up for the paycheck, I think we get burnt out eventually, especially if it's building a new bank is such a fast-paced job, it's such a demanding job. So what's your drive then? Like what brings you here every day?
I think being able to imagine 10 years later, right? As we look back actually to the bank that we want to build, or we are building right now, I like to think that 10 years later, hopefully I'm not working anymore.
I hope so too, but maybe for different reasons.
Yeah, so 10 years later, when I look back, right, I'll say, first, we built the bank. I built the bank. But extremely proud of what we've actually built the bank with, right? And where we are actually at the point in time. And third is that we've made a difference to the community that we're actually trying to serve in an industry that we're trying to innovate together, right? And that is such a compelling purpose to be at, right? Yeah, so to a large extent, I find it so cool that we're able to do that, and we're so privileged to be in that position. Yeah, so I think many of my colleagues and I, we're only here because we're able to hopefully look back and say, yeah, we've done that, no? And done that well.
Not everybody has the opportunity to build something from scratch. So I think it's definitely a very interesting experience. What about you? What drives you?
I'm going to borrow a little bit of what you said. When it comes to privilege, I think for me, I'd like to create privilege for other people. So folks that I work with, I have a lot of people who are very young, right out of university, shape those people so that at some point of time, they become another Pei Si for us. So instill those right guiding principles, confidence, belief in your skills, the ability to say, even if I feel that doesn't define me, just, groom them along the way so that they become the next leaders and the next people who go out there and build great things.
It's very nice, yeah. So I think the other thing that I feel about leadership is how to kind of bring your team together towards a common goal, right? And I think with GXBank, you have people that come from more traditional backgrounds. You have tech people who are maybe more used to like the AWS kind of speed and way of doing things, right? I think sometimes it's very hard to bring two people to this table and go the same direction. How do you navigate like this kind of differences in the team sometimes?
No, but you're absolutely right. I think the biggest challenge in getting the digital bank going is not the build. The most difficult thing is bring all these very diverse talents and come to a common place and being able to very healthily actually challenge each other as we try to innovate for the best solution. So that's one. Two is how do we bring them together? I think first off is about finding the right sets of people. Everybody is competing. And those who put up their hand to say, I want to do and join a digital bank, they are obviously already actually passionate and hard worker. But what you ultimately need are people who have their own beliefs and their own trains of thoughts, but at the same time is very happy to hear and listen to others and actually collaborate. And those are the ones that I think are able to bring it together. So that's one. That's on the individual level. At the organizational level, we are building our culture, right? And making sure that we get to the right place with it. We have, we call it our 3 Cs, right? We have 3 Cs. We want, and we're looking, the culture that we want to build is one that is actually based on being courageous, one that is about curiosity. And third, I think it's an important one is Cinta. Cinta is love, right? Therefore, actually 3 Cs. And the love actually for the users that we're actually trying to build for, the community that we're actually trying to actually build across board, the love actually for each other to make sure that we take care of each other to actually get there. So our 3 Cs really actually try to drive that. So organizationally, we need to do that. And the third, I think you mentioned that earlier, right? Building a startup, right? And building a startup bank is a tough one.
Certainly is.
It requires too many hours, too many sleepless nights. 1 year feels like 10. is what it feels. So therefore, those who come, they have to be really passionate about the purpose of why we are actually here. Because you can do you can earn actually the same with probably half the effort, right? And therefore having a purpose, aligning ourselves actually to the purpose of the organization, and to have a personal purpose of being here is such a big driver for success. So we've got a saying in our bank, we only say that we've done a really good job is when we all come together actually post a crisis, right? Because how we come together when times are tough, right? And very quickly get that done. And very often actually with our partners, right? Is when you are really proving that you are good at what you do. When not times are good, right? So and we've got many tough times over this 1 year. Yeah.
I guess with the sleepless nights, there might be a fourth C, which is coffee, right?
There is. And you'll be very surprised. Okay, you shouldn't be surprised. One of our biggest questions being asked during our town hall is, where's my coffee?
Fair question. I guess, culture does play a very big role in how the organization turns out and how the products and services culminate. And we've observed even in banks where there's a leadership change, and then very quickly you start to see very different things happening in the organization. And you've worked with a lot of banks, right? Have you seen instances where the kind of shift in culture drove a lot of ultimate change for the customers that you've worked with?
So if I just go back and look for a pattern across the kind of customers we work with and where we've seen success come out the most strongly, the formula is very clear. You're looking for a leadership that really loves change. You have leaders who will look at
the change, right?
Correct. Exactly. I'm going to borrow that phrase. So you have leaders who would say change, let me not rock the boat. Let me just keep it BAU. So when you love change, you're also then able to rally the troops and make sure that your company are able to carry that vision through. And the second part of that formula is it's okay if we fail. There will be something, like you said, something's got my back. There is immense self-belief that there will be a learning that will come out of the failure. There will be a pivot that they'll form and they'll come out of it stronger. And I think when you're as a leader, you're able to articulate that vision, live that vision, practice it through your actions, that culture seeps through.
And I think the commonality here is change, right? And I think for you, you've been on both sides of the world. You've been on the traditional side of things, and now a little bit more of upstart, startup kind of style of things. And I guess for our audience who may be from a more traditional kind of setting, what advice would you give them to be more successful at driving change internally, whether culturally, technologically, any aspects of it?
I think it starts with yourself. It starts with yourself first. Like I said, I think knowing actually what you are, what you want, right? And there's actually, frankly, there's nothing wrong, right, with folks who say, I'm not comfortable with the change. And there are others who say, I love the change. So if you're the folks who, I'm not comfortable with the change, then you know yourself, then you got to stay actually in a space that has less change for you to be comfortable. Now, for those who say, I want to challenge myself actually for the change, first it takes is, I want to do it. Number two is the understanding that it requires agility. It requires you to have resilience, because typically change is hard, right? And the resilience is an important, component, right? A factor actually for any successful change. The third is, and especially when you think about organizations, it's no point actually just doing your own change and nobody changes around you, right? Then how do you communicate a change? How do you execute the change? And how do one ensure that the change persists? And that means that we need to build structures. We need to build framework we need to ensure that when one goes, like if I leave, the culture and the structure and the framework persists beyond you. Because ultimately, right, when I measure my own success, I think I'm only successful when I leave a certain place, the impact that I've had and the change I've made continues without me and beyond me. And that's an important realization, I think, for every leader. Maybe I'll share one more story. One of the best ever compliment I ever had in my life. 28 years now, actually, in the industry. As when I was like maybe 15 years ago.
Must be the impactful one for you to still remember.
Yeah, I mean, I remember till this day, was one that came from my global boss. And I went from a large, from one role to another role. And the role that I left, right, I left like over 4 months, right? And then 4 months later, he came to me and said, Pei Si, it actually feels that you've never left.
Wow.
Right? And that's actually the best compliment I ever had. So when we run an organization, when we want to start an organization, we got to build one that will precede us. Can stay regardless, right? Your stamp is there and they will stay on, right? Regardless whether you're there or not. And that's a hard one to build.
And I think that's a very deep point because like sometimes as leaders, we develop this ego that we are so important. And not you of course, but I've seen certain leaders who have a savior complex, right? They're like, oh, this organization can only sustain and survive because I'm here. So it's important to also let go, take a step back and think about how do I build an organization that doesn't need me to be around. And I think that's also an important reflection for some leaders.
Yeah, because it's imagine if things happen with or without you. I think that's probably the best compliment anybody can give you, no? Right? Yeah.
Any memorable compliments that you remember from 10, 15 years ago?
I'll go a little closer to where I'm presently.
She's much younger.
I take the path less traveled. And that really stayed with me because it kind of reflected on a lot of choices I've made where I'm somehow drawn to, is this more challenging? Then I will go for it. So I don't like looking at work that's easy or that can be very quickly done. I like something that's a long haul, that takes time, that really challenges me to be creative and think out of the box and ask for people to come in. The path less traveled.
That's the more fun path anyways.
Exactly.
And on that note, I'd like to thank you both for your time and for sharing your insights with us today.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vincent.